So today I'll talk about practical leadership. Most leadership chat is about inspirational leaders. This is about how you as an individual can get ahead by understanding sensible day-to-day leadership requirements. It's rarely taught and it tends to go under the radar for the kind of sexy mega leaders like Richard Branson or Mark Zuckerberg, Churchill, Mandela. And my aim today is to get you thinking, just to get you thinking about two styles that can set you up for life, because we don't normally and naturally think how to lead in different styles during the day. And if only we knew how. So I typed leadership into Kindle and there were over 100,000 hits. So I know there are more than 100,000 books on leadership. So either there's a lot of experts out there or there's a very big demand. So I'm not going to try and compete with over 100,000 titles in 25 minutes. But if you read leadership books, they tend to focus on two things. The first is the different styles of great leaders. Here we go. Oh my goodness. Not a great leader. And Peter Griffin there. We're not going to be talking about this sort of inspirational leader or style of leadership of so-called great people. You'd be switching off. There's much more important than that. The other thing is legacy. All these leaders left a legacy, but we're not going to talk about that today. Again, there's much more than 100,000 books on the subject. And there's Bill Michael, bless him, former chairman of KPMG. I'll come back to him later. We're going to talk about you today, because all those leaders that I've shown you were all generally specific to a single purpose: war, religious change, political upheaval, founding dynasties, etc., etc. Project management in our daily jobs is the closest thing that most of us mere mortals get to that type of leadership. So managing big projects, or CEO. But I'm assuming that there are only a handful of CEOs in the audience today. And most of, if not all these leaders, could not deliver on the three demands on you on a daily basis: making money, doing the work, getting things done, and thirdly, keeping everyone happy along the way, which actually makes you rather special, because our lives are orientated to doing business. You are, your staff will be, we are all engaged, paid. I was motivated to generate profitable business. Three things. Firstly, in particular, the generation of wealth through good business management, commonly referred to dough, moolah, money, lucre, profit, marketing the business, business gathering, advertising, selling services, generating goodwill, living the values of the brand. That's what business wants from us as leaders. And in service industries like restructuring or banking, legal, accountancy, valuation work, a lot of it is about the transaction, closing the deal, the audit, banking, cash flows, the sale and purchase. Sorry, I'm just letting somebody in. The sale and purchase agreement, the appraisal, the court case, the M&A, the refinancing, the sublease, the downsizing, the equity injection. This is the transaction environment that we're all trained for. We get lots and lots of transactional training on and off the job. And if we're good at it, we get promoted. And ultimately, we lead people that now do the job that we did. And I've already clicked the third dimension to modern management that we rarely get taught, or don't get taught, or pick it up on the job. And people like Joseph Stalin or Queen Elizabeth I, they didn't need this because, well, he had guns and she had big guys with axes, right, to chop your head off if you didn't agree. And we now have, in its most simple form, an expectation on us in the modern world that we will keep people happy. We will keep people happy or make people happy, but we receive no training or little training. But it's a skill, and it's a taught skill. We all know good bosses and bad bosses. What was the difference? What needs of ours did a good boss satisfy? And what did a bad boss do to make us feel that way we feel about him or her? So I'm talking about relationship, things that even my grandfathers, possibly your great grandfathers, didn't need to work on in the command and control environment that went before us and came out of 2 world wars. But in the modern office, this is often the difference between our success and failure as a leader. Making money, delivering tasks, people management. Now, classic management theory tends to start from 2 extremes. The abdicator or laissez-faire manager, and the autocrat that our dads often talked about when they were at work. Theory from the 50s and 60s. We were told what to do, and if we didn't like it, there was little we could do. This is now rare in white-collar jobs, thankfully, and these leaders are a dying breed. I want to talk about the 99% of modern leading that goes on in between these 2 extremes styles. The first one, do you recognize this person? If you're a transactional individual, as you're likely to be, this was me. I bet it's lots of you. The pace setter. Have bag, will travel, give me a job is quite possibly what you get your bonus assessed on. You'll certainly be measured on it in some very big way. Superman, high octane, stress management, Flash Gordon, measurement by results, time-based deadlines, bonus linked to results. It's a fantastic life when everything goes well for us. But what about for the others? And how well suited is it to the happy bunnies outside of our team that are back at the office? And if this rings bells, today is absolutely for you. So welcome to transformational leadership. Can you see the potential for conflict? How do we build a visionary team, often of players who are transactional in their work, but that's what is expected as leaders in the modern world, coping with both transactional and relationships in the office at the same time is a skill that we're not taught. What I can do today is just to open your eyes to the 2 styles that will, if you get them in balance, set you up for life. And the way I'm going to do that is to just do a hopefully funny anecdotal on what is pace setting at its worst. It's really good for getting things done, right? But is it good for those of us around us? Our mums are the best pace setters examples in the world. She's saying, you've got 2 minutes to clean your bedroom. Look familiar? Ring bells. Leading from the front, mum gives the instruction only to follow up from the rear and do it herself 10 minutes later. And there's Sonny Boy, metaphorically, and in this case, actually in his hammock, because he knows whatever he does, it won't be good enough or fast enough. And the most important thing is it doesn't fit his values. So mum internalizes the pain, and before long is truly believing that she's doing everything in the house, aka office. Frustration for mum, frustration for the kids, because eventually they feel devalued, demotivated for office colleague, abdication, Don't worry, the boss will do it, mum will do it. Loss of respect, chatter. Question, do you know this person? Is it you? Is it somebody you know? And maybe who manages you or that you've come across in your careers. So let's have a look at transformational leadership. It was first codified by a social scientist, they were all smiley people, James Downton, in the 1970s. And if you Google transformational leadership, you'll get a ton of stuff relating to top leaders like Steve Jobs that start with inspiration and vision. I just want you to forget all that for today, because this is the office, right? And if we ever get back there, people don't need inspiring personalities every single day of their lives. It's about valuing the team ethic, and this can create internal conflict for the pace sitter, buying into the fact that success is a shared emotion in a team. Success is a shared emotion in a team. That's quite deep, but if you can conquer that, you're probably already a transformational leader, because that sharing of success is inspiring in itself, and people value success and therefore will warm to you. You will become a successful sharer, and that's an amazing personal resource to treasure. Next is empathy towards colleagues, the creation of understanding. Empathy, we all like to be listened to. Being told is very different to being listened to. Little children grow up being given a good talking to. How much better a parent would you be if you give your children a good listening to? And in the office, it's no different. So genuine empathy really does promote a motivated work environment. That's empathy as in understanding, but not necessarily agreeing. And the third thing that pace setters struggle with quite often is patience. If you can read on the slide that the guy at the back of the meditation class is asking, are we there yet? It's a really nice metaphor. If you were once a kid, as you were, or if you would have had kids that you drive, or if you have kids that you drive around, people at work at different paces. And in the wild, Bear Grylls will tell you that you move at the pace of the slowest. Now, that's not always possible, but it's respect for the differences in others that make the difference as a leader. And pace setters move rightly on task-orientated jobs with the fastest. How can they change that style to be a transformational leader or relationship manager? Well, it starts with knowledge today, because we don't routinely think about having different styles of leadership. Most of us, me included, go through our careers not really thinking about what style we have or we're using, because it's rarely taught. And if you can understand and embrace the two styles, you're already a world beater. If one dominates the other, you're out of balance. Like I was for most of my career, it didn't make me happy, and it didn't make me the most popular colleague either, I'm sorry to say. So I'm going to show you now a 3-minute video from Simon Sinek to pull this together. Simon is an author and a speaker. He speaks really well. And in this video, he will reframe what I've just said in a very eloquent way. Let's see if it resonates. It's 3.5 minutes, and then we'll have a wrap up. So let me try and play this video. It's working.
There are two things that I think that great leaders need to have: empathy and perspective. And I think these things are very often forgotten. Leaders are so often so concerned about their status or their position in an organization, they actually forget their real job. And the real job of a leader is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in our charge. And I don't think people realize this, and I don't think people train for this. When we're junior, our only responsibility is to be good at our jobs. That's all we really have to do. And some people actually go get advanced educations so that they can be really good at their jobs, accountants or whatever, right? And you show up and you work hard, and the company will give us tons and tons of training how to do our jobs. They'll show us how to use the software. They'll send us away for a few days to get trained in whatever it is that we're doing for the company. And then they expect us to go be good at our jobs. And that's what we do. We work very hard. And if you're good at your job, they'll promote you. And at some point, you'll get promoted to a position where we're now responsible for the people who do the job we used to do, but nobody shows us how to do that. And that's why we get managers and not leaders. Because the reason our managers are micromanaging us is because they actually do know how to do the job better than us. That's what got them promoted. Really what we have to do is go through a transition. Some people make it quickly, some people make it slowly, and unfortunately some people will never make that transition at all. Which is we have to go through this transition of being responsible for the job and then turning into somebody who's now responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. And as I said before, one of the great things that is lacking in most of our companies is that they are not teaching us how to lead. And leadership is a skill like any other. It is a practicable, learnable skill. And it is something that you work on. It's like a muscle. If you practice it all the days, you will get good at it and you will become a strong leader. If you stop practicing, you will become a weak leader. Like parenting, everyone has the capacity to be a parent. Doesn't mean everybody wants to be a parent, and doesn't mean everybody should be a parent. Leadership is the same. We all have the capacity to be a leader. Doesn't mean everybody should be a leader, and it doesn't mean everybody wants to be a leader. And the reason is because it comes at great personal sacrifice. Remember, you're not in charge, you're responsible for those in your charge. That means things like when everything goes right, you have to give away all the credit. And when everything goes wrong, you have to take all the responsibility. That sucks, right? It's things like staying late to show somebody what to do. It's things like when something does actually break, when something goes wrong, instead of yelling and screaming and taking over, you say, try again. When the overwhelming pressures are not on them, the overwhelming pressures are on us. At the end of the day, great leaders are not responsible for the job. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. They're not even responsible for the results. I love talking to CEOs and say, what's your priority? And they put their hands on their hips all proudly and say, my priority is my customer. I'm like, really? You haven't talked to a customer in 15 years. There's no CEO on the planet responsible for the customer. They're just not. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the people who are responsible for the customer.
If only I'd had this awareness when I started working from day one, if only I'd known that my performance would be down to two simple realizations: task management and patient relationship management. I could have had something from the start. I stumbled on it mid-career. I forgot it and then rediscovered it in my late career. Some of you know it already. For others, this might be a new experience entirely. It sounds so obvious, but how could Bill Michaels, chairman of KPMG, get it so wrong by boasting about his transactional capabilities, actually seeing customers in lockdown, and then walking over unconscious bias or the notion that it exists? And we talked about it in the very last session, and it's been mainstream since the 1970s. Look, these are not the views of TMA, they're my views. But look at the damage. He lost his job as chairman of KPMG. The firm doesn't need that. The staff don't need that. All because the focus on transaction took over his responsibility to relationship. It looks like he lost the balance. You might hate him or love him, but have you noticed how Boris charms our friends in Europe, even when the transaction was on the verge of failure? Whatever you think about him, that's quite a skill to possess, Very, very difficult. And Tottenham fans, any football fans in the room, have you noticed how Jose Mourinho is getting transactional again? He did it at the end of his reign at Chelsea. He took the Star to Manchester and failed spectacularly because he didn't develop relationships. And at Spurs, I'm absolutely certain he's had therapy, and he took relationship management to Spurs, but it hasn't worked for him because he slipped. So he's publicly now chastising his players whilst in pursuit of the win, the transaction. And how Jurgen Klopp, having lost 4 games on the trot, is there only to praise and regroup and take his players forward as a collective. So in summary, business leadership is a balance between leading on the transaction and leading the relationship. Big companies value the transaction, but they say they actually value the relationships. They talk a good game, but they put all the investment into the transaction, pace setting. But sustainable careers are based on something much deeper, relationship management, not with the client, but with the colleague. And all I can do in 25 minutes is stimulate your minds to learn both and embrace both and become a better leader than I was. And some of you will have recognized yourselves in this lecture. Others will have recognized other people. If I'd mastered both these stars early on, I would have been much better leader. If you mastered these 2 stars now, it will set you up for life. Thank you very much. And I can't thank Anna because she's had to drop. So as I stop sharing, are there any questions whatsoever, please?